Homosexuals are a militant cult seeking to pervert.
What the militant homosexual
others.
lobby wants is far more sinister.
They want our
than
children to be taught that perversion is normal.
The entertainment industry is a mafia of promiscuous shirt-lifters.
Words like puff, puffter, seedy, sleazy, creep, shirt-lifter even, these are words that you use a lot. You write in a way that suggests that you find homosexuality and everything to do with it very offensive.
I think most people probably do. I mean, it doesn't mean to say you hate individual homosexuals for being homosexual. Of course, most people don't.
But you hate the phenomenon?
I think most people find the homosexual acts to be instinctively repugnant, yeah.
Instinctively repugnant?
Yeah.
I think there's some excellent jokes to be made about women, excellent jokes to be made about queers, lesbians, anything like that, and none of these subjects need necessarily be avoided.
I don't regard my job as anything more, quite frankly, than providing things for people to talk about in pubs.
TV shirt-lifters, telly-puffs.
Professional puffs.
Wall-to-wall with woofers.
Gay Simon.
Camp comic.
Fashionably bent.
I do use the words because that's the way I talk. I do object to the use of television to promote homosexuality.
So where is that? Give us an example.
EastEnders is the most obvious example.
That's propaganda?
I believe so.
Lawler stopped Ian in his tracks by telling him gay stood for Got AIDS Yet. It was closer to the truth than the soap writer's belief that the disease plagues Cockneys ahead of shirt-lifters, junkies and sub-Saharan Africans.
I particularly object to the way that it sets out to educate people from their prejudices.
Biggles was not only an alcoholic, but also a raving pufter. A few years ago, one might not have objected to the idea of this drunken Nancy boy being put on television to tempt small boys. If they wanted to be buggered, that was their own affair. But since the arrival of the disease called AIDS, it seems rather irresponsible to encourage small boys to take up a hobby of this sort.
The only thing that really worries me about the whole thing is actual anal intercourse. You wanted sort of mad homophobic speech, and this is it. Because obviously the anus was designed, as it were, to repel waste, fatal things. It was not designed to receive tokens of love or anything like that. And I must admit that I do have an anxiety in my mind just on that one area of it. Personally, I don't find the ideas of lesbians either incomprehensible or even disgusting. I can quite see they prefer women's company, and if they, you know, it's sort of like play, really, sort of, or as I see it, the sex between lesbians. I don't think it's...
Why? Because there's no willies involved that would make it grown-up sex.
There's no sort of violence involved. There's no, you know, which there is in anal intercourse.
There was something both heartwarming and sad, it seemed to me, about the Princess of Wales's devotion to her friend, the art dealer Mr. Adrian Ward Jackson, as he lay dying of AIDS in St Mary's, Paddington.
If someone had been dying of cancer that she knew on this kind of basis and this kind of level, would she have spent 8 hours, entire days at the bedside? Well, would she have flown from Scotland? Would she have left her children and her husband in Scotland and flown
Well, surely
out?
she was saying, I commit myself to people who are dying from this disease, and I am not going to shun them. So she was making a very important political statement, wasn't she?
She stepped outside the kind of safe things that the royal family normally make themselves patrons of and campaign for.
Homosexualists, this is a term you seem to like, are toppling over in the street like ninepins. They suddenly lose all immunity to illness. AIDS stands for acquired immune deficiency syndrome, but when they tell me this and ask what they should do about it, I give up. Try ordinary cheddar cheese with an aspirin, I say weakly. What do you think of that one, given what we now know about AIDS?
Well, I'm not prepared to be crippled by guilty because I don't think you can say some subjects are so sacred, you've got to put on holy faces, make the sign of the cross every time we talk about AIDS. I don't think you do have to.
I've even heard some people advocate tattooing a massive A on the foreheads of carriers, although one on the base of their spine would be sufficient. What about a luminous tattoo? Abandon hope, all ye who enter here. The truth is, there is no heterosexual AIDS explosion. There never will be.
Unless you lead a very promiscuous life, unless you indulge in the activities that these high-risk groups indulge in, how am I going to catch it? I'm a married man with 3 kids, both totally monogamous. How am I at risk? I'm not. If you, but if you were You could be at risk if you were very unchoosy who you slept with and what sort of things you did. But the whole point is there's a whole different argument, because if you'd said right from the start, as soon as these realities became known, that we should perhaps what's the word I'm looking for? Quarantine people with AIDS or HIV positive carriers and things like that. It's another alternative that would have been just as valid. I think there's an argument for it.
Plainly spread by drug addicts or by sodomy.
Normal standards chipped away.
Gayness is perverted anyway, so...
Well, it is by definition abnormal.
I'm abnormal, then?
Well, if you want to get the dictionary and look it up.
Am I abnormal?
Well, I don't know. I don't know you.
I know. They know nothing about me.
What I'm saying
Am I abnormal?
What I'm saying to you is heterosexuality is the norm. Therefore, anything that deviates from that is abnormal by definition.
Right, but we also know that within the domain of heterosexuality that there are many, many variants, and how are we to identify what is legitimate or natural or unnatural? I mean, any of it could be. What's at stake for you in insisting on the abnormality of it?
I'm not insisting on it. I'm really pointing out that that's a definition. That is by definition what it is.
Abnormal because it's unusual or atypical?
That is what,
unnatural?
Yes, unnatural, abnormal.
Martina Navratilova's former companion, Judy Nelson, is photographed leaving an American court with her 2 handsome sons. Their mother was pursuing her claim against Ms. Navratilova over what is described as a non-marital cohabitation agreement. To appear in such a case flanked by her 2 sons struck me as particularly revolting.
That she'd involved her sons in this relationship. The sons were supported. No, I mean, there presumably was a father. She didn't have to involve her sons, and she didn't have to get Martina Navratilova to pay the sons' school fees.
What should she have done?
Strike you as extraordinary.
Cut the boys out of her new domestic life with this woman?
My own feeling was she shouldn't have had a domestic life with this woman.
Offensive to the vast majority.
Trampling contemptuously on the public
Unreasonable
sense of what's
demands.
right and what's wrong.
Gary, I'm bewildered. What is it about insisting on the right just to be a person allowed in society, having the relationships that you do without trampling on anybody, without doing very much other than just sort of getting on with your life and falling in love with the people that you fall in love with, who happen to be of the same sex?
It's the politicising of homosexuality. See, once upon a time, homosexuals wanted to be left alone. Now it's almost to the stage where acceptance isn't enough. Approval is what's sought, and if you actually attempt to argue against it, then you become stigmatised. I mean, I'm portrayed in the Pink Paper and papers like that as a sort of homophobic bigot.